Welcome to the Drawing Board. I'm your host and in-house artist, Erin Leffler. If you're not familiar with the Drawing Board, here's a quick recap of what happens on the show. Every episode of the Drawing Board, I invite guests from the comics and entertainment industry, and we learn a little bit more about what they do. And while we learn about what they do, I also draw them. Pretty fun, right? Well, I'm very excited to introduce y'all to my guest this week because we finally have another sports-themed guest, and I know there's a lot of y'all out there who love sports. So my guest this week has done a lot of cool things, like being the first ever to hit 3 Grand Slams in a match, which I think is really cool. He's won 2-time All-Star awards and has gotten 3-time Golden Glove Award, which is also really cool. He's played with so many different teams, and he wrote this wonderful book here, as you can see, that I have. Please welcome my guest, Eric Davis. Hi there.
How's everything? How you doing? That was a great intro.
Thank you. You know, I always tell people that's always where I get the most nervous, but it's getting a little bit better.
Are you going to draw me?
I am absolutely going to draw you.
Nice.
This should be fun.
Do I get to keep
it? For
it?
kids who don't know what you do, because I just mentioned a ton of things, do you want to tell us a little bit about your career?
Well, I got drafted out of high school 40 years ago. Born and raised in Southern California, played in professional baseball some 20 some odd years, and then when I left that, I came to the player development side, and I'm a special assistant to the general manager for the Cincinnati Reds, and this will be my 13th year doing that. So I've been in the game almost 40 some odd years and playing and been an executive, so that's fun.
That is incredible. Now, you had just mentioned that you kind of got drafted right out of school with it. So I have to ask, when you were in school, did you train a lot with baseball, or was that kind of something you picked up on your own?
No, excuse me. I played every sport when I was a kid. The actual first sport I played was tennis. And I played basketball. I got recruited to high school to play football and ended up being all-state in basketball and all-state in baseball. So sports has always been a part of my DNA. Growing up in South Central Los Angeles, at that particular time, it was a great vehicle to keep you occupied from the streets and the drug scene and the gang scene growing up in Los Angeles. So I've always been a sports person. I advocate it right now. I think it's great learning tools. With learning multi-cultures, learning discipline, learning failures at a young age, up and down, and learning how to compete in life. And I've just enjoyed it. So it's been part of my life for so long.
That is amazing. Now, I'm sure there are a ton of different legends that you looked up to when you first started getting into the game. Are there any that you can think of that you really focused on and paid attention to try to model your game after?
Well, that was yes and no. When I was a kid, we didn't have cable and stuff like that, so you didn't get a chance to see a whole lot of guys. But growing up, I was able to listen to some games on the radio. Growing up in Los Angeles, Vince Scully, who was the ultimate of sports announcing, that's who you wanted to emulate. That's who you wanted to hear, watch the games, listen to the games, and learning about Jackie Robinson and Willie Mays and Hank Aaron and the Big Red Machine in Cincinnati with Joe Morgan and all those guys. So that's when we really kind of listened to the game and watch the highlights, because that's all you had, and then you go in the backyard and try to practice their batting stance and all those type of things and stuff like that. So once I got drafted, Andre Dawson became my guy, because I played center field, he played center field. We had similar skills for his athleticism, hitting, running, throwing, doing all those type of things. So when I got to pro ball, he was that guy.
That is amazing. And those are incredible influences. Anybody who even may not be fully aware of what goes on in baseball knows a lot of the names you just mentioned, especially Jackie Robinson for being a trailblazer in the sports industry. So I definitely do not blame you for having those as your role models to look up to.
Right.
So a less serious question I love getting to ask, because a lot of times when I've guested at Comic-Cons, I've had kids come up to me, because the way that media presents it nowadays, a lot of kids think the only way to be good at their job is to only do their job all the time. So this is where I love to talk about hobbies with my guests and why they're important to what we do for work. So do you have any hobbies, and do you find that they actually help you be better at your job?
My hobbies probably had no influence on my sports career at all. Um, because my grandmother owned a soul food restaurant and my mother owned a soul food restaurant. So cooking was kind of infectious in our household at a young age. Uh, plus my mom did interior designing. So I would turn to buying, buying rehab real estate properties and fixing them up to sell them. So that was part of who I was. Putting things together, clothing wise, I would tailor my own clothes and I would design my own clothes and things like that. So all of the things that I end up doing had nothing to do with baseball, but it ended up transcending who I became. Because when we would get to spring training and, you rent an apartment and all the guys would come down and they would to always smell my kitchen cooking and they would always want to come eat. So I got to the point where I told them, y'all buy the groceries, I'll cook. I wasn't gonna buy the groceries and cook. That sound like a wife, don't it? I ain't gonna do all that. So I told them if they buy the groceries, I'll cook. And then it transcended to me and my style and how I dressed as a professional, which actually I got that from my mother. She always told me, may she rest in peace, was that every time you leave a house, you represent me. And so you never know who's gonna see you for the first time. And I still, even today, I still iron my jeans and put spray starch on them and do all that kind of stuff. So all of that kind of stuff I still like to do. I'm a handyman around the house. I fix things. I have my Mr. Plumber tools and I do what's ever needed.
That is awesome. I think it's always good to talk about that because there's a lot of life skills we can learn from different things, and being able to focus on things other than our job also helps us.
Oh, and it comes in handy tremendously. Just from being able to plant my sprinkler systems and put gutters on the house and change the toilets when I moved into my house in Arizona, change the toilets and different stuff like that. So you never really get the true feel of something until you've pretty much did it yourself. And then you sit back, and that's where the admiration, when you admire yourself to the fullest, when you like, you know what? I did that. Yeah, that looked cool. And I ain't had to pay nobody.
Absolutely.
So enjoy that aspect of life.
Absolutely. I think that's always a good thing too, is having that sense of pride and accomplishment when you were able to do something, because that really does make you want to do it more.
Absolutely, 100%.
So something with the sports industry compared to other things in the entertainment industry, the sports industry especially is a highly competitive industry. You have to compete against each other in games, you have to compete for jobs, and that can be a little challenging. Do you ever find at times that competition can be a little overwhelming, or is it something that you can use in a healthy way?
Both. It's cutthroat. That's exactly what it is. And especially for the ones who wasn't drafted high, who wasn't a lottery pick in whatever sport they pertained in, but the kids that are coming in undrafted, unheralded, trying to compete, it's really cutthroat. On the other hand, if you don't have the competitive juices, then you're not for that sport anyway. So it's another cliche that my mom used to always tell me: if it ain't worth working for, it ain't worth having. So if you're not afraid to compete, you're not afraid to put in the work, then you probably don't want to do what it is that you want to do. And that's just not in sports, that's in life in general. If you don't put forth, even with what you're doing right now, it's a certain amount of effort that has to come in that people see the glitz and the glamour and they see the finished product all the time. But behind the scenes, they don't know how much you study, how serious you take your craft, how much time it takes in order for you to do the things that you do. So in all walks of life, if you're not willing to put in the work, then you're not really ready to get the reward.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good point to bring up because a lot of times nowadays, because everything is so simplified with how much technology we have and different resources, that we kind of forget how much work goes into stuff, and
Yes.
we
Yeah.
don't always put forth our best effort to get where we're going.
Well, yeah, we're in a microwave area now. Our society is everybody wants everything right now. Everybody thinks that if you go real hard for 20 minutes, you're going to be a hero and you're going to be the best that ever lives. Even from a parenting standpoint, when they're um, grooming these kids that's coming up now, they're putting all of their emotions into raising their kids to be what they couldn't be, or because they fell short in something, whether it was talent or whatever, then they want to make sure their kid don't fall short. Or they want to make sure their kid go the extra mile. But what I've learned and what I talk to people about honestly is everybody's path to success is different. And everybody's definition of success is different. Because you can have success and not be successful. And so it's a huge difference in how it's being proclaimed, especially in our youth. Because if they don't get something in a certain timetable, then they lose interest in it. And that's what hurts a
Absolutely.
lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think along with that, because this is something I always love pairing with competition, especially, there's a whole thing where rejection comes into play. And that also is very much a deterrent because if we rush into something and do something very fast and we get rejected, then we also don't feel like doing it. But also, rejection can kind of come in different forms, whether it be on social media, from people around us, or even rejections for jobs. Do you think rejection is something that should be taken personally, or is it kind of like a driving force you can use to learn from and put more effort in?
Well, I think it depends on how you're being rejected and to what form are you being rejected. Uh, Me being rejected because I wasn't good enough, I have no problem with that. Because everybody's not good enough to be what their dreams want them to be. Uh, and it takes a certain amount of skill, quote unquote skill, to do everything, regardless to what it is. And you can work your tail off. If you don't have that certain skill, I could want to draw every day, but hell, I can't draw. I don't have that skill. So me being rejected from that would not bother me because I wasn't suited for that. Uh, what would bother me was being rejected because of the color of my skin, or because I'm a male, or because that doesn't fit me at that particular time. Someone telling me I'm not going to be good enough, that doesn't bother me. Uh, uh, if I know that I have the ability to do that, that person's rejection is going to be someone else's gain. I don't want people to reject me because of who I am and what color I am. I want them to say I just wasn't good enough, and if that's the case, I can live with all of them.
But I think I think those are good points too that you bring out with both competition and rejection, because a lot of times I think we forget stuff like that when it comes to both those things. Because as humans, we take everything so personal.
Our society is about winning, and it was a saying years ago, uh, way before you were born. It didn't matter whether you win or lose, but how you played the game. That used to be uh, the rules of competition. It didn't matter. As long as you competed and you gave it your all, it didn't matter. And somewhere we've lost that and put the emphasis on winning, which creates animosity, which creates anger, which creates division, which creates cheating, which turns the sport into uh, something less desirable. People become maniacs. The fans become driven on winning. The people the fans take it more seriously than the players do sometimes, because they can't do it, number one, and number two, they wear it in their heart, and it makes it almost frightening, because you see some of these places where you go and the fans be like, they out for blood, and that's because winning and losing is being driven as the forces. Of course you want to win and you want to lose, but as a kid, you having fights in Pop Warner football games and Little League baseball games because of the parents and their drive to whether the kid is not playing enough or the team loses and this, and it just makes for a whole lot of uncomfortabilities when it comes to winning and losing, when I don't really think, especially if you're not a professional, it shouldn't be the motivating factor to win.
Absolutely. I think that is a good point to bring up as well, because it does seem that the fans sometimes take it farther than the people actually playing the game does, and
Oh,
that doesn't
absolutely.
always breed a good environment.
Yeah. And it drives hate, it drives anger, it drives a lot of things. And sports or dancing or any type of competitive thing for men, women, girls, boys, it's learning the art and the form, and learning how to compete and have fun in the art, where it enhances your growth as a human being.
Yeah.
But when you
That's a
turn the
great way of putting
artistic
it.
side into money, it drives it into something totally different.
Absolutely. That is a wonderful way of putting it, because I think a lot of times, especially when I've ever watched sports, is the one thing I can always say is you love to see when you can tell the players are having fun because they know it's a game, that it's not something that should be
Right,
taken as a life or death thing. So
right,
I
right.
definitely think that's a good thing for kids to learn ahead of time, is that you're doing it because it's something that you love,
But
not
it's
because.
hard because when they watch the games on TV, or they watch like the network shows with the various athletes, and I have a lot of respect for anybody that's doing that, but they take it too far to a point to where now the kids are listening to everything they say. You see kids in Pop Warner football trying to do end zone dances and doing the things that you see on TV, and it's so, they have such an impact on the youth that sometimes I don't really think they realize what type of impact they do have based on some of the things that they say. Now, everybody can't play, and everybody can't play at the ultimate level. You know what I mean? That's just not reality. And when you're talking about, say you're talking about 1,500 people, could just say the NFL has 1,500 people. Those the best in the world. That ain't just the best in the United States. That's the best in the world. And then you'll have somebody on TV say they suck because he dropped the ball or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like here you got millions and millions and billions of people on this planet Earth, and you only got 1,500 that can do what it is that they're doing. And so to me, they just ridicule it so much that they don't know the impact that they have on the kids' lives as well as the players.
And do you think that's something that you could see that could be improved and changed in the coming years?
No, because networks like it and they love the controversy. And that's probably why I don't do TV myself, because I'm not gonna get on there and ridicule somebody that I played against or played with or competed with or competed against. For somebody to give me $1 to go up here and say my buddy sucks on TV just so people can clap and say, look at him, he called him an a-hole or something like that. That's not.
Yeah.
I have way too more respect for myself than I do a dollar bill.
I think that's a wonderful thing to remember too, because a lot of times also the way that media portrays things, we're also pushed that everything we're doing is for money, we're doing it for a job, but
Absolutely.
where the balance
Because
of morals and money come in is hard
I
sometimes.
shouldn't have to ridicule somebody for me to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to try to demoralize someone's character, even though they're having a rough time in life because I'm getting a check. I just don't. It's not enough healing in the world. It's not enough love in the world for me now to throw salt on someone else's wound. That's just not me, so I prefer not to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important thing for anybody watching this. Even adults can learn from that alike too, is that there's not enough of kindness given in that way towards the world. It's
Right.
always so cutthroat that it's a good thing to remember that sometimes your morals have to outweigh whatever the monetary value is.
I don't know if a lot of people will say this, but for me, I live in Arizona, and they say for the first time this state has been blue based on the election, and Biden turned it blue. But prior to that, I've been here 5 years, and in the pandemic, it was probably the calmest people that I've ever been around in my life. And it's a lot of respectful people that speak to you on a daily basis, that go out of their way to say hi and do different things. Now, you got your crazy people, you got people that's gonna do their thing anywhere. But here, it's so much peace and serenity here, and all the people that I talk to who are from here is always saying how the state was in the process of turning blue because of the mixture of people that reside in Arizona now. And to me, that's a huge statement because on how the people are. And if the people can't allow themselves to feel for another person, regardless to what flavor they are, or male or female, or what they like in life, or whatever, then we're all in trouble. And you can see why our country and why the world is the way it is now. But hopefully that's, as grown-ups, we can set the trend for the youth around the world to understand that peace and love is the way.
Absolutely. Something you actually kind of brought up something that I love talking about, because a lot of times there is not a lot of acceptance and growth in the industry when it comes to diversity. There's a lot of times where everything is kind of stuck in the same box that it has been for a while. How important do you think it is for kids to be able to see people who look like them, sound like them, come from the same place that they do on their screens?
I think it's huge. Because I think that it's just as important for white kids to dream, as well as Latino kids, Black kids, Asian kids. It's just as important for all kids to be able to identify with someone that looks and sounds like them. Unfortunately, the people that make the decisions don't look and sound like everybody that we're trying to get them to look and sound like. So you have so much systemic racism that people in this country are blind and deaf to it because of the insecurities of their own lifestyle, because of the challenges of not wanting to compete in life, not to want to have a tendency to face rejection, all the things that we have to deal with as minorities, and having women being put in that category too. You've had to face all of the above. And if you have to face rejection, you have to face, well, you can't do this because you're a woman. That's racist in itself, and you're still overcoming. And until the real people who make a difference in this country allow the systemics to become equal. And for me, I don't want anybody to give me anything. if my skills and my talent and my hard work and my dedication to whatever the task is allows me to obtain a certain, then just don't prohibit me from getting it. You ain't got to give me nothing. Just don't prohibit me. Don't blackball me. Don't try to use systemic racism and say, well, this or that. That's what I don't care about the rest of it, because I'm not a politician, but the systemic racism that goes on in this country has to stop. It has to change.
Absolutely. And I think that's always an important thing to bring up, because some people are, I don't want to say sheltered, but at times we are, because sometimes it's not brought to our attention because we're doing our thing, you know, this doesn't affect me. But it's something that we need to realize, that we kind of have to like reach out a hand and help one another, because there's people out there who are just as talented as us, but they're not getting the same.
Well, until you as an individual in any walks of life, in any transition or change or wherever you're headed in life, there's going to be obstacles. And when you face the obstacles honestly, then you will understand what's really going on. And for people to sit around in this country and say, I didn't know, what were you, in a bubble? I'd rather you tell me you just didn't give a damn than to tell me you didn't know. Yeah. Because you have to know. You live in this country, in this world every day. And until you open up your mind and your heart to talk to people, but be honest with yourself. See, every minority, and women are included in this too, we talk to ourselves about situations all the time.
Yeah.
Because you have the foresight of trying to obtain something that's being held back away from you or dangling and you can't reach it. So you talk about certain things all the time. And the people who control the aspects of a lot of things that happen in this world, and this, especially in this country, they don't talk to themselves all the time. And so they don't care, because they don't talk about why I have what I have and why I do what I do and why don't I have this and why didn't I do this. And so until they start talking amongst themselves and talk to themselves, you won't see major change. You'll see small pockets of change. But until the people who are supposed to be able to have the biggest impact on change start talking amongst themselves and talk to themselves, that's when you see a broader scope of change in this country and the world.
Absolutely. So for kids that are watching this right now, that can now keep this in mind as they're coming up and going through their lives, what is something that you would suggest to help be able to make this difference?
Read. We have, for the first time in MLB history, we have a female that's a general manager of the Florida Marlins, and she's Asian. So you talking about diversity at its finest. For the first time in Kamala Harris, we're going to have a woman as a vice president, a Black woman as a vice president. So you have opportunities. Don't be shy. Don't be reluctant to pursue. Because you're going to have people that's going to try to redirect you. No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. Because they don't want to see it continue. And you're going to get rejection. That's why you have to be able to understand the rejection and not look at it as a negative. Okay, well, that might not be for me, but let me go over here, or let me do this. Because you can really be anything you want to be. But to me, that's not the most important thing. It's huge, but the most important thing is how many follow. Does it open up a seed where it's a constant turmoil, it's a constant turnaround? And that's where the diversity in certain sports aren't the same. It's not a constant turnaround. It's one or two. Yeah, Jackie started it, but how many came after Jackie? A whole lot of people came after Jackie. You have the first Black president. We had that, but how many more is gonna come after President Obama? That's when you know change. It's really becoming intimate when you have more that follow that initiative.
Absolutely. I thank you for saying those things, because I feel like that's a very important topic. I love bringing it up on the show because I feel the more education, the more that we know about it when we're younger, the better
Right.
off it's going to be come the future, because you have the tools then that you're equipped to help make that change.
Right. I just think that don't take any one person's word for anything in this world. Read, do your due diligence, find out for yourself, ask questions. You don't like the answer, ask somebody else. If you get two different questions, ask the third one. Somebody you want to be able to understand and learn for yourself. Because here in 2020, you're finding out so many things. Even in the past few years, you're finding out there's so many things that has transpired in this country wasn't true. Yeah. And we've lived our life this way, thinking that this is the way that it is, or this is the way that it was. And when you find out something is totally different, it's devastating. And if we can find out at a younger age, then you have a chance of understanding why it happened and how I can make a difference so that it won't happen again. That when you are devastated as an older person, you don't have enough time to try to fight fights and all that kind of stuff, because you don't know how long you're gonna be here. So you want to preserve all the energy you have for self and your grandkids and other things like that. So reading and learning and asking questions and not just settling is the way to go.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about this book here, because this is something really special. Now, if my kiddos out there aren't familiar, if your parents aren't familiar with his wonderful career, you, for a time, were battling something that not a lot of people have to battle on a daily basis. You were going up against cancer, which is an incredibly hard thing to do. Can you tell us a little bit of how that journey kind of affected your career, and did it help you improve in certain areas?
I was diagnosed with colon cancer in June of 1997. I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't have any signs that I came to know what were symptoms and signs. I didn't know that prior to it because it wasn't in my family. What I learned in that it was an elderly disease that was in white men that was 50 and over. I was a Black man that was diagnosed at 34, so I quickly threw that out the window because I wasn't elderly, nor was I a white man. So that's when I learned cancer don't discriminate. It's very articulate in how it moves. I was diagnosed, like I said, in 97. I had just hit a triple. We was playing in Cleveland. I just hit a triple and I scored on a sacrifice fly. And it kind of had a little slide in the home plate against the catcher and had a nice little collision. And as I got up to go back out after 3 outs, I couldn't get up. And that's when the pain had hit me like nothing I'd never had before. So they took me out of the game, and doctors came and looked at me. They thought maybe I had fractured rib or something and stuff like that. So I ended up playing the next day, and I was still in some pain, but it wasn't the same. And then we went to New York for Memorial Day weekend, and we had a day game, and I played that game. And after that game, I was in the hotel room and I couldn't move. And the pain was just so excruciating. So I called the team trainer, and he immediately put me on a train back to Baltimore because I was playing for the Baltimore Orioles at the time. And the ambulance picked me up from the train, and they took me to, what was the name of the hospital? I drawing a blank on the hospital. University of Maryland Hospital, one of them hospitals or something. Yeah. So I was there for 8 days, and they couldn't find out what was wrong with me. They put a catheter in my stomach and told me I had an abscess, and they tried to drain it overnight one night. And so they was actually, because the pain has subsided, you know, in the hospital, it's better subside all the medicine they got in the hospital. So actually, so they was actually going to release me to go back and play. And I called everybody in that hospital, chief of staff, and nobody could tell me how an abscess got in my stomach. Luckily for me, I had a business partner that worked, she actually lived in DC. And she told me to check out the University of Maryland Hospital and check into Johns Hopkins Hospital. And that's what I did. I left out of Johns Hopkins Wednesday night at about 4 o'clock. And the first test the physician at Johns Hopkins did was a colonoscopy. I was in University of Maryland for 8 or 9 days, and they did everything but a colonoscopy. And the first thing he said, you got a tumor the size of a grapefruit. We got to go get it. So he told me he wanted to go get it. I waited Wednesday night. I waited for my mom and my wife to come from California. And I had surgery Friday the 13th. So the guy, Dr. Lillimo, who was my physician, he said, you want to have surgery on Friday the 13th? I said, this is a damn movie. I ain't scared of Jason. I wasn't scared of Jason or whoever his name was. And I wasn't scared. I was more relieved because somebody told me what was the problem. To me, the worst thing in the world is not knowing. If I know, I can fight it. I can deal with what I know. I can't deal with what I don't know. So it was more of a sigh of release for me to learn what was the problem. And once he told me, I was like, okay, what we got to do? And he said, we're going to have to go in there, we're going to have surgery. So I did that. I ended up taking 32 weeks of chemo. I actually came back to play in September, and I played in the playoffs and World Series. I was taking chemo once a week, and I came back and played. So I was blessed in the form that I've had some good people around me that understood medicine. A good friend of mine, that his wife was a herbalist down in Houston, Texas. So she gave me some. She brewed up like 7 different teas for me to drink every day, and I would drink it, and I never got sick from taking the chemo. Actually, I ate while I was taking chemo. I would take it 2 hours a week, 2 hours a day for a week, watching a movie, eating a sandwich. Yeah. And I never felt sick. I didn't throw up. I didn't do anything because I never took it on an empty stomach. And all the teas that she gave me was fighting just to regain the normalcy of my organs, which helped me tremendously. But I don't think it changed my style of play. If everything, it gave me a greater appreciation for the game, for people, for cancer, for how many people it affects, especially the children. People talk about me being an inspiration, but at half the time when I was taking chemo, I was in the children's ward and having to hang out with them and seeing 5-year-olds that was brave and smiling and giving me thumbs up. And here I'm 34 and lived a great life, and they giving me thumbs up. So it was just so much that made me become. I was always a humble individual, but it made me even more humble, if that's a word, because of what I was witnessing that I had no control over. It was the well-being of cancer-stricken kids, and that's what touched me.
That is an amazing thing too, because it's hard to, I think, whenever we're given a circumstance that may not be the most positive, it's hard to remain positive in that.
Right.
But it sounds like your outlook remained pretty good while you were going through that.
Yeah, I mean, it was past the strongest things is not knowing. Um, I knew something was wrong. I was already in the hospital. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what. Um, Anytime that you're put in a situation where you have to hear that kind of news, it's really predicated on when and how you hear it. Um, because being in the hospital, like I said, and having doctors coming to me, checking me every day, and not nobody knowing what the hell going on, that created more animosity than anything. Um, and that would stem to me to getting up and leaving and going to another facility. But once I found out, it was like, okay, let's go do this. I never whimpered. I never asked why me, because I felt like, why not me? It's so many more people that's been affected by worse than I have. And if this is a sign for me to spread the word, then so be it. And so that's how I look at it.
Do you find that it depends on how you handle a situation, especially like that kind of helps the outcome of it? Like if you handle it.
Oh, it's huge. Absolutely. Also, your family members and your friends that surround you played a huge part. They were talking about me coming back to play, and when I wasn't even talking about coming back to play. Having faith in God helped me. I've always been a Christian since I can remember, so it was really nothing for me to get down on. And the people said, well, you came back and played. I was like, but it was nothing that was preventing me from coming back to play. Why wouldn't I? So I don't think I did anything that was heroic and things like that. People say you did it, but I was like, I felt good. And when you feel good, you go to work. Right?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, though, because I feel like that's something that could be useful for kids to hear, because a lot of times when we get down about something, if we're going through hard times, it's hard to see that there's a positive about it that'll make the situation better. But if you look for that positive in the situation, it's going to make your outlook so much better.
Now, I got a question for you in the audience. Do you want to tell them how we met?
This is a funny one. So we actually met when I was a very small baby. He actually knew my parents, and I stole his hat at a game.
Yep.
So this is actually my first time seeing him since that.
Yeah.
Which I have to admit is like the weirdest thing, because now it's like 2 decades later, and I'm like, oh
yeah.
no.
Yeah. How we
so sorry for stealing your hat.
I'm calling security. What's security at? I want my hat back.
You know, babies don't know what's going on. They just grab whatever they see.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons throughout your career. You've done different avenues in the industry, which would also lend itself to learning different things. Are there any lessons that you can think of in particular that kind of stick out in your mind as something that kids might be able to find useful?
Appreciate the journey. Everybody's journey is different. Could never take an opportunity for granted, because you don't know if you'll ever get it again. Embrace change. Most people are afraid of change because change is the unknown. And everybody likes to know the situation and prepare for the situation. And I'm going to get this, and I'm going to call this person, and they're going to be ready when I'm. Embrace it. Embrace the challenges that life has to offer. If it's something that you feel good about, don't be afraid of it. Challenge it. Everything has a process. And here's the key thing. If you don't make it, it's okay. If you're not good enough, it's okay. Most people don't believe that if I don't make it, it's the end of the world. No, it's not. That means that your talents are going to come out in something else. Because bar any physical ailments that we were born with. We all have super gifts that we're excellent at. We might not want to do them because we might dream on having an island or something, but we're all gifted in some capacity or another. And that's what makes our world go around, because we have brain surgeons, we have doctors, we have so many different jobs that are needed in our everyday lives that we take for granted. But that's someone's gift, to be able to take part of my colon out and sew it up and me not have, that's a gift. And so whatever that gift is, find what makes you happy to do it without calling it work. And if you enjoy doing it without being work, that's your calling.
Absolutely. I think that is a wonderful thing for people to remember, because a lot of times we often think of it like, oh, I have to do my job. That's it. But if you really like it, it's not going to come across like a job.
It's not a job, because you see how vibrant you just got when you said, I like it. That's what most people do when they're doing what they like to do. You be like, how you do that? Because I love doing. Well, whenever you ever see a person who takes care of dogs not be happy,
No.
it seems like they're always, okay. Seem like they're always happy, because that's what they enjoy doing that.
Absolutely.
And if most people would find what their true gift is and put their heart and soul in that, then they'll never go to work a day in their life.
Absolutely.
Because we all have a gift, but we all don't acknowledge what our gifts are, because certain gifts might not result in being a billionaire or being a multi-millionaire. And that's where we dream sometimes. But that's why I said, go back to understanding what's the difference in success and being successful.
Yeah.
It's based on the individual. It's based on how you view yourself. And your gift, and acknowledging your gift will definitely make you successful, because it's about you. It's not about how other people perceive you to be.
Absolutely. I think that's important, even if there's adults watching this right now, for all of us to still remember, because we do tend to forget after a while, because like you said, if it's not making you $1 million, it's kind of like, well, why am I doing this then? Well, do you enjoy it?
Absolutely.
So that's definitely a key thing to keep in mind. Just a couple more questions for you. These ones are some of my favorites, because I think these are important, because a lot of times when you make it to a certain point in your career, people think, that's it, there's nowhere else you can go, that you've reached the top and nobody can do better. But everybody is big dreamers, no matter what we're in, whether it's sports, whether it's in acting, art, you name it. Is there anything that you haven't gotten to do yet, whether it be in your industry or something else that you want to try, that you'd like to give a shot in the future?
Probably 10 years ago, maybe. I'm really becoming content. I'm really never satisfied, because when you allow yourself to be satisfied, you stop improving. But I'm really content with what I'm doing right now. I don't want to be a manager. The game has changed. I would want to be the general manager or a president of an organization, to put my stamp on an organization. That would be the only thing that I would want to do. I don't want to coach. I don't want to do all of that kind of stuff. I've outgrown that. As you get older, you kind of move away from the energetic stuff that I got to physically go do, which I'm not out of shape or anything like that. But you know, when you get older, your bones be like, hey, stop, don't do that. So that would probably be the only thing. Because when you have grandbabies, your life changed. And I have 4 with 1 on the way, and all of them are girls. So I will never stop working, because when you got girls, you got to keep working, because that is super high. And but no, I'm at peace with myself. Um, I'm at peace the way my life has been blessed for 58 years, and I don't have any regrets on my career or anything that I've done in life because it's all led to me being the person that I am in 2020.
I think that's awesome. I think the point you just made too about being at peace with yourself is something that everyone can kind of strive towards, because I think in our lives that's something that's really hard to attain, but once you do attain it, it's kind of like it's a good feeling.
It doesn't mean that you stop working. It doesn't mean you stop caring about other people. It just means that I'm at a place with myself where I'm so past a lot of shit that goes on in the world. Excuse my language. I'm so past it.
Yeah.
And I'm at peace when I come home. I'm at peace when I sit out on my patio and I smoke a cigar and I watch the birds chirp and I just watch them and just enjoy watching the sunset and not hearing helicopters and sirens and things that I grew up listening to every day. That's what that means. I'm at peace with myself. And it's not about how much money I have or what I can buy. I've been down that road and it's not the most important thing to me. It might be important things to other people, and that's your peace. But my peace, that's not. I don't set my day based on saying I have to do this or I have to get that. No, so I'm at peace.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful thing. And I hope a lot of you kiddos out there learn something from that, because I think everybody can take something away from that. So my last question for you, my favorite question of all, because this kind of takes the whole episode, wraps it up nicely in a bow and ties it up. If there's a kid out there watching this, a young adult or even an adult who wants to get into doing what you do or just wants to be better in their career path, what's the one thing you think they should walk away from this episode learning?
Find somebody that can help you obtain your dreams, that has the same confidence in your dream that you do in yourself. Because nobody makes it on their own. Sometimes we get bad advice. Sometimes people push us where they want us to go because of their own insecurities or their own goals. Find yourself. Find somebody that believes in you, that's going to help push you for your reasons and not their reasons. And when you find that person, or it could be a multitude of people, then you guys will grow together and you will appreciate the influence. Because there's so many people who don't have people's best interests at heart. They might fake it, but they really don't. And you have to be able to nudge those people to your outer parameter circles. Because to me, you should have a couple circles that got different layers, and you keep certain people layered in your life. And the closest the people are to you are the more valuable people that you should have in your life. And everybody should have a role in helping you develop your life. And once you can do that, then you're going to have people that's going to always give you the best advice. Not always the right advice, but it's going to be the best advice. And with that, then you can obtain and be anything that you want to be in life.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that is a wonderful thing to take away, and I hope you kiddos out there learn so much from that. And now comes my favorite part of the episode, where I get to show you what I made while we were talking. I am going to warn you ahead of time that my lights in the studio sometimes like to mess with the screen, so I will get an actual copy of this sent to you, but I'm going to try my best to get it up in here. And let's see if I can do it without getting any glare.
Wow.
Hey.
That's cool.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
You did that for real?
Yeah.
Can I see that again?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try and get that back up in there.
Where are my earrings at?
They're very tiny. It's kind of hard to see.
No. Black diamond.
I'm saying it's kind of hard to see on the screen because the light's kind of messing with the colors, but I'll send you.
Are they in there?
Yeah, they're in there.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it. Oh, bless you. I like that. That's nice.
Well, thank you so much for coming
That's
on
a
the show.
gift.
Thank you.
That's a gift.
Coming on the show, and thank you again to everyone who tuned in. Again, I am your host and in-house artist, Erin Leffler. Catch you next time on the drawing board.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.